Today, I saw the God Saint. Here's what happened to me so that hopefully, if you decide to go, you can do better. Take a moment to think about every saint you've ever heard of. Now take a moment to think about everything they had in common. The ones I'm thinking of were role models, mostly educators. They gave to others unselfishly. They were the most generous people. They refused material possessions and worldly comforts. Thinking of them brings me a sense of peace. I wasn't brought up in a religion with saints. Even so, I still hold these views. I think they're pretty universal, but then again, I could be wrong. Did any of the saints you thought of drink or smoke incessantly? Did any of them sleep with anybody else's wives? Did they betray anybody? Did anybody have to remove their limbs to punish them? Most importantly, are any of the saints that popped into your head also gods? Guatemala is different from every other country that I've been to, and I can't believe I didn't think it would be different when it came to its patron saint. A unique country demands a unique saint, so I went across the lake to Santiago Atitlán for answers. In order to get to Santiago Atitlán from where I am in San Marcos, you take a lancha. This is normal, I do it all the time. However, I usually only have to take one lancha. Santiago is in the direction of San Pedro from San Marcos. However, unlike what I've had to do before, once I get to San Pedro, I'll have to get off the boat, then walk across town to another dock and board another boat. I do all of this. However, after I get across town in San Pedro to the other boat, it's sitting there waiting, but it won't leave until 15 people have paid for the boat ride. So I did all of this rushing to get to this second boat dock and just wait. So I have to wait for an hour. Once 15 people get there, we're off to Santiago. On top of all of that, it's raining cats and dogs. I waited until midday to make this voyage, hoping that the rain would stop or at least get better, but in fact, it's now raining harder than before. That is why I did not bother trying to vlog this experience, and now I'm really feeling a time crunch. Here's some beautiful stock footage of Santiago Atitlán. Though I must admit, it contrasts sharply with the gray, drizzly weather I encountered during my visit. Santiago Atitlán is the largest village on Lake Atitlán, renowned for its deep-rooted indigenous heritage, vibrant textiles, and rich spiritual traditions. The town is primarily inhabited by the Zutulhil people, who have remarkably preserved their language and customs across generations. Everything I had read painted Santiago as the more authentic, less tourist-driven alternative to places like San Marcos, San Juan, and San Pedro. But once again, my experience didn't quite align with the narrative. From the moment I stepped off the boat, it felt like I was being viewed less as a guest and more as a walking wallet. When I get to Santiago, I'm actually worried that I'm not going to make it back to San Marcos before the last boat leaves at night. Trying to take a private boat at night costs around 450 quetzales or $60. That's around $55 more than it would cost to take a public boat during the day. I am not cheap. I am also not poor, but cash is really hard to come by on the lake. So, needless to say, I am rushing. When I get to Santiago, my plan is to find Maximón, find the church, and then get out. In and out, fast. When you get to Santiago, there will be men on the dock being very friendly to you. That's because they are trying to sell you a walking tour. The walking tours are 200 quetzales, which is about $26 and up. No thank you. Then I get off the dock to the tuk-tuk drivers, and I think I'm safe, but the tuk-tuk drivers have their own driving tour they want to sell you. The driving tours are 150 quetzales or about $20 and up. Finally, I am able to communicate to a tuk-tuk driver that I do not want the tour. I just want to go to the church, and he takes me. Had it not been for the rain, I would have chosen to walk. But after a brief, soggy tuk-tuk ride and 25 quetzales later, I arrived at the Church of St. James the Apostle, a historic landmark dating back to 1547. Its whitewashed facade stands as a beautiful example of colonial architecture, quietly dignified against the gray sky. Surrounding the church is a cobblestone courtyard, at the center of which stands a solitary stone cross. The yellow buildings with white columns that frame the square all face inward, toward the church, suggesting this space has long served as a communal gathering place, a site for both reverence and civic life. According to local legend, the Mayans of this region were forewarned by ancestral spirits of the approaching Spanish conquest. In an effort to safeguard what was most sacred to them, they gathered their spiritual relics and symbols of identity, bringing them to the very hill where the church now stands. The site became hallowed ground, a sanctuary of cultural preservation. But with the arrival of the Spanish, that sacred space was overtaken, and the Church of St. James the Apostle was erected atop it, a symbol of conquest built directly upon the foundations of indigenous reverence. The merging of Mayan beliefs with Catholicism reflects the vibe of Santiago and many villages around the lake. For example, the semicircular steps leading to the main entrance total 20, a number central to the Mayan numerical system. Upon stepping into the church, the eye is immediately drawn to a commanding painting of Apostle James, the first martyr and patron saint of Spain, watching over the sanctuary with solemn grace. Above, sheer green fabric drapes from the ceiling like a canopy of mist, casting a soft hue over polished chestnut wooden pews and a gleaming green pebble-tiled floor. The effigies of Jesus and the saints are clothed in garments inspired by Zutulhil tradition, their robes rich with local patterns and symbolism. Along the sides of the nave, rows of puppet-sized saints rest propped against the walls, each adorned with intricately woven Mayan scarves that fuse Catholic reverence with indigenous artistry. The altar bursts to life in a vivid display. Red carpet beneath a profusion of red, yellow, and white flowers, while sacred Mayan symbols, including ears of corn, are thoughtfully placed among the offerings, bridging two worlds in a single sacred space. Be sure to wander through the church's secluded interior courtyard, a verdant garden where emerald grass carpets the ground, a majestic tree spreads its broad canopy overhead, and blossoms in every imaginable hue sway gently in the breeze, infusing the space with an unmistakable air of tranquility and grace. This place is beautiful, even under gray skies. It's a beautiful church, incredibly peaceful. It feels like all are welcome here. So that makes it really hard to believe that it was the scene of a murder. In a previous video linked in the description, I used liquid courage to explain how the United Fruit Company played a role in pushing Guatemala into the longest civil war in Central American history. In 1954, the CIA overthrew Guatemala's democratically elected president under the pretext of fighting communism, triggering a civil war that lasted over 30 years. We messed up Guatemala. To oversimplify, there was a left and a right. On the left, you've got some communists, mostly not communists, some using guerrilla warfare. On the right, you have the government and the military. Never forget that the government and the military was backed by the United States. The communities around Lake Atitlán were far from immune from the effects of the war. In 1980, some Santiago townspeople were recruited into a leftist guerrilla group. Shortly thereafter, a military base was built. Soldiers started terrorizing people in the name of searching for communists, and people mysteriously disappeared. Then the bodies started showing up, piling up with signs of torture. This was genocide, and the Mayan people suffered the worst. As you enter the church, before reaching the image of St. James, you're met with a quiet yet powerful shrine to Father Stanley Rother. He was a Catholic priest from Oklahoma who arrived in Santiago Atitlán in 1968 and quickly became much more than just a missionary. Rother immersed himself in the lives of the Zutuhil people. He learned their language and preached in it, something no one else had bothered to do. He co-founded a hospital, smoked a pipe, and earned deep respect and affection from the local community. But his dedication came at a cost. During Guatemala's brutal civil war, Rother witnessed unspeakable atrocities. His work, educating and supporting the indigenous population, made him a threat in the eyes of the right-wing government and military. After learning his name was on a death list, he briefly returned to Oklahoma. But his love for the people of Santiago drew him back. In 1981, assassins entered the church, then a sanctuary for many, and murdered him. It's believed he stayed silent in his final moments to protect those hiding nearby. Though his body was returned to the United States, his heart remains here, buried beneath the church he served. That year, he was one of 10 priests killed in Guatemala. No one was ever held accountable. Today, his shrine is lined with prayers in English, Spanish, and Zutuhil. Pope Francis recognized him as a martyr and beatified him, the first American to receive that honor. He is now on the path to sainthood. I left the church and caught another tuk-tuk to find Maximón. The whole purpose of coming to Santiago originally was to find Maximón, the God saint. The persona of Maximón that is saintly is San Simón, or Saint Simon. However, it's really important to understand that Maximón is not recognized as a saint by the Catholic Church, and seeing as Catholicism is monotheistic, he's not a god there either. Maximón is a local saint and deity. His existence represents the synergism that you see between Catholicism and Mayan mythology in certain elements around the church. There are different stories about Maximón depending on what area of Guatemala you're in. In each story, he's supposed to be a protector. According to one legend, Maximón was a man hired to protect the virtue of village women while their husbands were away. He did the opposite, betraying their trust and incurring their wrath. According to another legend, Maximón was never a man. Shamans conjured him to defend against evil. He came as a wooden figure. Again, he did the opposite and betrayed their trust. Maximón was punished by cutting off his arms and legs and twisting his head around. Then he was tossed in the lake. Finally, he did what he was asked to do. There is a real man who could be the source of the Maximón myth, but then again, this person could be a myth himself or even a composite character. Colonization was a brutal and devastating force. Lives were taken, entire communities were subjected to forced labor, and women endured horrific violations. Foreign diseases swept through the land, leaving devastation in their wake. In the midst of this cruelty, a Mayan village elder rose in defiance against the Spanish oppressors. For his resistance, he was executed. But legend says that death did not silence him. According to local lore, he returned from the dead to continue defending his people. And many believe he may be the original incarnation of Maximón. Catholics believe that Jesus returned from the dead. But here's the kicker. This Maximón belief did not begin until after the Spanish conquest. At any rate, and regardless of what you believe, one does not simply find Maximón any more than one simply walks into Mordor. He does not reside in any one specific place. In fact, he has different residences depending on the time of year. He's hosted by the families of his followers in their private homes. They keep vigil over him 24/7. Since his location varies, it was time to catch a ride. My new tuk-tuk driver, to whom I gave clear instructions to take me to Maximón and then take me to the lancha, drove me as far as he could, then guided me on foot the rest of the way. I paid him 25 quetzales. The rain hasn't let up, and now my camera is getting wet. Reaching Maximón feels like stepping into another world. There are no signs, no directions, only a winding brick path known to locals. Without a guide, I would never have found him. It seems deliberately hidden, perhaps to ensure that visitors contribute directly to the community. As I get closer, soft music begins to drift through the air. The scent of smoke and alcohol lingers even before I reach the entrance. I step into a dim, smoke-filled room, lit only by flickering candles. Maximón awaits. A donation of 5 quetzales, less than $1, is expected. His effigy stands before me, a wooden figure dressed in vibrant traditional Mayan clothing. Guardians, likely members of the host family, stand nearby. They protect him, tend to his offerings, and perhaps most importantly, keep his cigarette lit. God forbid it go out. Out of respect, I hand Guardian 1 10 quetzales, making my offering a total of 15 quetzales. In response, he carefully places another cigarette between Maximón's lips. Guardian 2 gets into a drunken argument with a random worshiper who's also clearly drunk. Amid the chaos, Guardian 1 approaches me and I can smell the alcohol on him. With slurred speech, he explains that the amount I paid covers taking photos, but if I want to record video, I'll need to pay extra. So I was done. Honestly, it wasn't even the money. All of the acolytes were drunk or high or both, with bright red bloodshot eyes. I was taking this tradition seriously, and maybe that's my fault. I didn't realize it was an excuse for bad behavior. Let's just say I did want to pray to Maximón or ask him a question. In that case, I would have to bring him more money or more booze or more cigarettes. This might be a great time for somebody else, but it was a colossal waste of my time. Not to mention, I now need a bath because I smell like cigarettes. I've loved nearly every moment of my journey through Guatemala. But for the first time, I'm genuinely ready to leave a village and head home. The process of getting to Santiago is too complicated. The weather is miserable. I reek of smoke. And everywhere I turn, it feels like someone is trying to squeeze a few more quetzales out of me. When I boarded the tuk-tuk, I was clear. Take me to Maximón, then to the lancha. The driver asked if I wanted the tour, and I plainly said no. I had no interest in visiting a mirador in this weather, and I'd already seen the church. I assumed we'd head back through town toward the dock. But soon, I noticed we were climbing a steep hill. That's when it hit me. We weren't headed to the lancha, which is downhill. He was taking me on the 150 quetzales driving tour, about $20, even though I had explicitly said I did not want it. This was basically a soft abduction, but I did not protest because I don't know what kind of pressure that young man was under. I don't know what kind of sales quota he needed to reach. The mirador, unfortunately, was underwhelming, completely veiled in mist. The sweeping views it promised were lost to heavy fog. The towering mountains and distant volcano were nothing more than faint silhouettes. And the lake, usually a stunning shade of blue, had dulled to the same lifeless gray as the sky. Still, some scenes remained striking. Down at the water's edge, village women continued the centuries-old tradition of washing clothes in the lake, unfazed by the weather. Even in the cold and rain, their rhythm endured, an echo of generations past. Despite the conditions, the mirador did offer one clear impression: the immense scale of Santiago. From up here, it's obvious this is the largest village on Lake Atitlán, sprawling and alive, even beneath a blanket of fog. On the way down from the mirador, the young man started trying to explain some things to me about a cemetery that we were passing. I didn't understand what he was saying because it was all in Spanish. But then he took me to a locked park. A plaque in the park said 1990. Now I get it. By 1990, Guatemala's civil war had dragged on for 3 relentless decades. One night in Santiago Atitlán, a group of drunken soldiers unleashed chaos on the townspeople. Among the most horrifying incidents, one soldier attempted to assault a young woman. Her family acted swiftly, calling for help and having him arrested. But the army intervened, freeing him and returning him to the base. Outraged and exhausted by years of military abuse, the townspeople had had enough. They gathered in the thousands to demand justice, not only for the woman, but for the countless violations they had endured. They wanted accountability. They wanted peace. They wanted the fear to end. On December 2nd, 1990, they marched to the military base. The army responded with bullets. 14 unarmed civilians were killed, and more than 20 were injured, gunned down in front of the church that had long served as a place of sanctuary. Today, the 1990 Santiago Massacre Memorial stands in solemn remembrance of that day. Simple, yet powerful, it features plaques, crosses, and heartfelt tributes to the victims. It is both a reminder of lives lost and a testament to the strength of the community that survived. The massacre sparked outrage both in Guatemala and abroad. The backlash forced the army to withdraw from Santiago, making it one of the few towns in the country to successfully expel the military. But the cost was immeasurable. At this point in the tour, I made it clear, again, that I just wanted to return to the dock. This time, the message was understood. Ironically, I never would have discovered the memorial on my own. In that sense, I'm grateful for the tour. But the way it happened, the manipulation, the disregard, it leaves a bitter taste, casting a shadow over my experience in Santiago Atitlán. Despite certain aspects of its violent history, Santiago is a peaceful and a beautiful place to visit today. Go for the history and leave Maximón right where he is. If you still want to visit Maximón, even though I warned you, then you do you. As I watch my tuk-tuk driver disappear into the distance with 150 quetzales of my money, the realization sinks in. I seriously overpaid. I'd already given money to a different driver for the ride to the church, and then paid this one separately to take me to Maximón. That's a total of 200 quetzales. Looking back, I could have just taken one of the organized tours from the dock and spared myself the confusion and frustration. But hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. The rain hasn't fully stopped, but it's softened to a gentle drizzle. I had asked the driver to drop me off at the top of the street so I could walk a bit on my own. The narrow road is lined with trees that usually offer shade on sunny days. Not that it's needed today, under the gray, heavy sky. The cobblestone path to the lancha is charming despite the weather, flanked by small shops selling hand-woven textiles, local artwork, and colorful souvenirs. Indigenous symbolism brightens sections of the walkway, and festive decorations hang from the lampposts above, swaying slightly in the breeze. Okay.
Dale pues.
Eventually, I find the boat returning to San Pedro. The captains on the Santiago route always ask for payment, 25 quetzales, in advance. Only one other passenger is on board. We sit, waiting in silence for nearly an hour until enough people arrive and the boat finally departs. I can't help but wish I had time to return to Santiago on a sunny day, knowing everything I know now. If you're planning a visit, please learn from my missteps. It's a place worth seeing, but it helps to go in prepared. Stay curious, be inspired, find freedom, wander elsewhere. I'll see you in the next one. Would you visit Santiago Atitlán? Comment below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below or respond to the prompt.